Is this your final answer? Jungkook's voice echoed in the glass-walled studio, sharp and steady, yet laced with disbelief. The neon lights of the control panel flickered across his tense jawline, casting shadows that danced like ghosts across his face. His hand was still resting on the play button of the demo they had just finished. The one where the final verse still waited for Taehyung's voice. But across from him, Taehyung didn't blink. "Yes," he said simply. There was no venom in his tone, no anger. Just a devastating finality. The room stilled, as if the world itself needed a moment to process what had just happened. The other producers, staff, engineers, even the manager hovering by the door slowly turned their eyes away, pretending to check their phones, cables, coffee mugs. No one dared to speak. Jungkook leaned forward. "You haven't even heard the full lyrics." Taehyung let out a slow breath through his nose. "I don't need to." There was something beneath those words, something cold, aching, and ancient. The hum of the studio monitors was the only sound between them now, a low electric murmur that felt like a countdown. Jungkook stood. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "So that's it? After everything?" Taehyung's gaze didn't move. "After everything, yes." Outside the studio window, Seoul's skyline blinked silently under midnight clouds, a mirror to Jungkook's chest lit with 1,000 questions, and none of them answered. But the worst part? Taehyung didn't look away. He just whispered, "You know why." And that's when the glass between them shattered not literally, but emotionally. The divide that had started years ago, beneath fame, beneath fans, beneath brotherhood, had cracked wide open. 2 weeks earlier, they'd been laughing at an award show after-party, drinking ginger ale, half inebriated on adrenaline and nostalgia, pretending the past hadn't left bruises on both of them. Jungkook had pulled Taehyung aside that night, just behind the velvet ropes, and said, "I have a song for us." Taehyung smiled, lips curved but unreadable. "For us? It's not about healing," Jungkook had added quickly. "It's just honest." And now here they were. He didn't even ask which part Taehyung couldn't accept. The melody? The lyrics? The memory stitched into each verse? No, Jungkook already knew. He had written a line that was too personal, too revealing. A line that, if sung by Taehyung, would echo like confession. And Taehyung wasn't ready to confess. That night, Jungkook left the studio alone. His hoodie pulled low, his earbuds refusing to play anything but silence. The city moved around him. Traffic, laughter, autumn wind, but inside him, nothing moved. Meanwhile, Taehyung stayed behind. Long after everyone had left, he remained seated in the dim studio, staring at the lyric sheet Jungkook had handed him. He traced the ink with his finger. "If only we said the truth when it was still safe to say it." A muscle twitched in his cheek. He folded the paper, not tearing it, not throwing it away, but placing it gently inside the inner pocket of his coat. The next morning, social media lit up. Is Taehyung part of Jungkook's new solo album? He better be. They were spotted leaving Hybe together. Please let there be a Taekook track, please. Neither of them responded. But Jungkook posted a muted snippet of the track, just a piano, and a line of vocals cut off before the final verse. Armies dissected every detail. But no one knew that the silence wasn't an artistic choice. It was a decision, and somewhere deep in Hanam-dong, Taehyung stared at his phone screen, reading an old message from Jungkook that simply said, "If we ever stop being honest, we stop being us." He didn't cry. He just placed the phone face down and picked up his guitar. Not to write, just to feel the strings vibrate under his fingers, like a heartbeat he hadn't listened to in years. Meanwhile, Jungkook met with his label's creative director. "We can ask another feature artist," she offered gently. "Maybe RM or Jimin." But Jungkook shook his head. No one else can finish that verse. And for the first time in his career, he considered leaving a track unfinished. Not because he couldn't complete it, but because he wouldn't. In that decision, there was grief, but also loyalty. A loyalty that felt one-sided. That night, in the quiet of his studio apartment, Jungkook recorded a voice memo. Not for release, just to say what he couldn't say face to face. "You didn't even tell me why, but I guess the song already knew." He paused. "I still left your name in the credits." Then he hit save and titled the file, "The Verse You Never Sang." You know this is going to explode online, right? Jimin's voice cut through the soft rustling of vinyls and the ambient jazz playing faintly in the record store. He stood near the end of the aisle, holding a Miles Davis reissue in one hand and watching Jungkook from across the shelves. Expression unreadable. Jungkook didn't look up. He was staring at an empty sleeve of a limited edition pressing. A silence fell between them again, thick with unspoken names. "They already think you're fighting again," Jimin added. "Some fans say you unfollowed each other on your alt accounts." "I didn't," Jungkook muttered. "But he did," Jimin asked carefully. Jungkook didn't answer. Instead, he exhaled slowly and put the sleeve back with a soft thud. His fingers lingered a second too long before pulling away. "He said no," Jungkook finally said. "No reason. No discussion. Just no." Jimin leaned against the shelf, arms crossed, eyes scanning his Dongzong's face. "And you're not going to ask him why?" "I already did. He said I knew." The sound of the record store faded behind Jungkook's heartbeat. A dull, rhythmic throb. The next time he saw Taehyung was 3 days later. Backstage. Private event. No cameras. No screaming fans, just echoing footsteps and the bitter scent of espresso clinging to the green room furniture. The air conditioning hummed as if trying to drown the tension. Taehyung was seated in the corner, guitar resting on his knee, tuning it slowly, deliberately, as if it was more important than everything that was unraveling between them. "You've been avoiding me," Jungkook said without preamble. Taehyung didn't flinch. "Not avoiding, just choosing silence. That's the same thing." "No," Taehyung said, plucking a G-string gently. "Avoidance is fear. Silence is protection." Jungkook took a step closer, voice low. "From what? Me?" Taehyung didn't answer right away. He looked up, eyes darker than they used to be when they were younger, when they were invincible, when they hadn't yet learned what their words could do to each other. "From reopening something that never really closed," he said quietly. Jungkook froze. "You think that song was me reopening something?" he said, his voice hoarse. "I wrote that because I thought we needed to." Taehyung's jaw tightened. "That's the problem." "You thought." Jungkook's breath caught. "You're blaming me for writing what I feel?" "No," Taehyung said. "I'm blaming you for assuming I wanted to feel it again." The silence after that was brutal. Taehyung stood slowly, set the guitar down, and walked past Jungkook to pour himself tea. The clinking of the porcelain was louder than necessary, sharp, fragile. He took a sip before speaking again. "There are parts of us," he said, "that don't belong to the stage anymore." Jungkook turned. "Is that your way of saying you've moved on?" Taehyung met his eyes. "It's my way of saying you haven't." And just like that, the curtain between memory and truth fell. Jungkook stepped forward, eyes flashing. "I didn't write that verse to guilt you, Taehyung. I wrote it because it's real. Because no one ever talks about how silence isn't peace, it's punishment." Taehyung's hand clenched around the teacup. "You left me to guess what I did wrong," Jungkook continued, voice rising. "Years of us walking on eggshells in front of cameras, pretending nothing cracked between us. And maybe that's all we should have ever done," Taehyung snapped. That silenced Jungkook. Taehyung's hands were trembling now, but his voice was steadier than ever. "Because when we stop pretending, things fall apart. They always do. The world wants us to be perfect. We owe them at least the illusion." "I don't want illusion," Jungkook said. "I want truth." "You want closure," Taehyung corrected, with almost a trace of bitterness. "And you think the album is how you get it?" Jungkook didn't respond. The green room door opened suddenly. A coordinator peeked in. 10 minutes until stage. Neither of them moved. As the door clicked shut again, Taehyung set the teacup down and turned to Jungkook one last time. "You can keep the verse," he said. "But if you ever release it with my voice, I'll walk away for good." Jungkook swallowed hard. "I never intended to force you." "I know," Taehyung said, almost softer now. "But some truths are better unsaid." Jungkook nodded slowly, and when he finally walked away, he didn't look back. But Taehyung stood still, staring at the guitar he'd left on the couch. His fingers twitched. He had learned to play it for Jungkook, back when the silences between them were filled with music not meaning. And now even the strings felt like betrayals. That night, Jungkook performed a stripped-down version of the track. No backing vocals, no harmonies, Just his voice and an aching space where another voice should have been. The crowd roared anyway, but Taehyung, watching from the dressing room monitor, felt nothing. Only silence. Only truth. And the quiet horror of knowing he still remembered every word of that verse. The moment Jungkook stepped off the stage, applause still echoing like a tidal wave behind him, his hand trembled not from nerves, but from restraint. He had held it together through the entire performance, despite the heavy absence that gnawed at every line he sang. He didn't look back toward the wings where Taehyung used to stand during rehearsals, pretending to be just another bandmate, but always singing along under his breath. Tonight, that space had stayed empty. The harmony was never recorded, and Jungkook had never felt more alone on a stage full of lights. The dressing room was cold, too quiet. He tossed his in-ears onto the vanity and stared at his reflection for a beat too long. Mascara smudged slightly beneath his eyes, and his jaw was locked tight like he was holding back a scream that wouldn't come. A knock at the door broke the tension. It opened before he could answer. Yoongi walked in, dressed in black, eyes scanning the room. He had seen enough to understand without asking. He was watching from the monitor room, Yoongi said plainly. Didn't blink once. Jungkook's shoulders tensed. Then he heard the lyric. Yoongi gave a single nod. Every syllable. Silence crept back in, until Jungkook exhaled sharply. He knows that part was about him, right? Jungkook asked, not truly expecting an answer. The second verse, the one I rewrote, the line about losing something before you knew you loved it? Yoongi leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You practically spelled it out. I wanted him to hear it, not just understand it. Jungkook's voice cracked around the edge. I wanted him to feel it the way I did when he walked out that night. 3 years ago. No warning, just gone. Yoongi's expression didn't shift, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He still won't talk about that night, he said after a pause. Not even with me. Jungkook closed his eyes. There it was again, the void. The night no one dared to mention. The night Taehyung disappeared from a tour stop mid-rehearsal, vanished without a message, and returned the next day as if nothing happened. The group never asked. The fans never knew. But Jungkook remembered every second. The conversation they'd never finished. The almost confession they'd both choked on. The fear. Jungkook grabbed a towel and wiped his face, his movement sharp. If I don't say it through the music, I'll never say it at all. And if he still refuses to sing it with you? Yoongi asked quietly. Jungkook didn't answer, because deep down, he wasn't sure the track mattered anymore. What mattered was that Taehyung heard it. Meanwhile, across the building, Taehyung sat in the hallway outside the monitor room, coat draped over his knees, hands clasped. He wasn't supposed to be here anymore. His car had been waiting for over an hour, but he couldn't move. The lyric looped in his head. You said we had time divided by, but time's never kind. Divided by it left us behind. Divided by, before I knew you were mine. He had written a line once, years ago. Hidden in a notebook no one ever read. It said, I love him too much to tell him. And now, Jungkook had written the opposite. I never told you, and I hated myself for it. Taehyung stood, not because he was ready, but because he couldn't breathe in that corridor any longer. He opened his phone and saw the trending page. Number Taekook Unspoken was number 2 worldwide. The clip of Jungkook's performance, particularly that verse, had gone viral in less than 20 minutes. Armies weren't stupid. They knew something had happened. He scrolled further and saw a clip from 3 years ago. A fan cam. Grainy footage of Taehyung storming out of a rehearsal, and Jungkook standing in the middle of the stage, calling after him with a voice that cracked. It was resurfacing now. Everything was. A message from Jin came in seconds later. You two need to talk before the internet writes the ending for you. Taehyung turned the phone over, then got up and left the building. He didn't go home. He went somewhere quieter. A rooftop they used to sneak onto during pre-debut nights, back when they were still unsure if they'd ever debut, when their voices were still cracking from overwork, and their hearts weren't yet broken by the machine of fame. He sat on the ledge, hoodie pulled tight, and played the verse on his phone. Then, with trembling fingers, he pressed record on a voice memo. I hated that you said it first, he whispered. Because now, if I say it, it'll sound like I'm just echoing your pain, but I'm not. He paused. I never sang that verse because I wasn't ready. I'm still not. But maybe silence has done more damage than any lyric could. He stopped the recording, saved it, didn't send it. Back at Jungkook's apartment, the lights were off. He stood by the window, holding his phone like it might ring, like a name might appear. But it never did. Instead, he opened the project file of the track again, dragged Taehyung's name from the credits, paused, then put it back in. Because even if Taehyung never sang it, the verse would always belong to him. The fans would never know the full story. But maybe one day, Taehyung would listen again. And maybe that time, he wouldn't just hear it. He'd answer. The studio was supposed to be empty that night. No engineers, no producers, no cameras, just darkness, low voltage lights buzzing in the rafters, and the raw echo of memory hanging like fog in the air. Jungkook didn't want anyone there. No assistants. No interruptions. Just him, the piano, and the words Taehyung refused to sing. He hadn't slept. The performance from 2 nights ago had left him drained, and the press tour that followed only made it worse. Every interviewer circled around the same question with forced smiles and gleaming cue cards. Why wasn't Taehyung part of the album? He'd answered them with diplomatic phrases, deflections, and half-truths. But his eyes, those had said everything. The fans noticed. They always did. And the speculation turned toxic fast. Clips of Taehyung laughing during a radio show aired just hours after the album's drop were being ripped apart. Accusations flew across the timelines. Disrespect, jealousy, disloyalty. None of it was fair, but neither of them had done anything to stop it. Until tonight. Jungkook sat at the upright piano, the same one they used during their early writing sessions. His fingers moved slowly over the keys, hesitant, like they were searching for something fragile, a sound, a memory, a version of Taehyung he could still talk to. Behind him, the door creaked. He didn't turn around. He didn't have to. Taehyung's cologne hit him before his voice did. Bergamot and cedarwood. The scent had never changed, not since 2017, and now it wrapped around him like a ghost. I wasn't going to come, Taehyung said from the doorway. Jungkook's hands paused above the keys. But you did, he replied. A long silence, heavy, charged. Taehyung stepped in, closed the door, and stood behind him for a moment that stretched like a lifetime. Then, slowly, he moved to the couch by the wall, the one where he used to curl up during late sessions with his notebook and coffee, scribbling lines Jungkook would later turn into melodies. I heard the demo again, Taehyung said. Jungkook didn't answer. He kept playing. Soft chords that rose and fell like a confession spoken too late. I listened to it alone, with headphones. His voice was calm, but something was fraying underneath. Jungkook could feel it in the way he breathed, the way his sentences cracked at the edges. I never said it, Taehyung continued. But I knew what you meant. That lyric. It was about the night in Tokyo, wasn't it? Jungkook's hands stilled. The room froze. You were going to say something, Taehyung said, his voice lower now. I saw it in your face. But then the phone rang, and I pretended not to notice. I told myself it was easier that way. I was going to tell you, Jungkook's voice faltered, that I didn't want us to just be teammates anymore. Taehyung looked down at his hands. They were shaking. I knew. That's why I left rehearsal. Jungkook turned slowly to face him. Why? Taehyung lifted his eyes. Because I felt the same. The words hit the air like a landslide. But we couldn't be that, Jungkook, he added, voice trembling now. Not with the world watching. Not with the contracts, the cameras, the managers breathing down our necks. You know what it's like. You know what they would have done to us. Jungkook stood from the piano bench, fists clenched at his sides. I would have chosen you over all of it. Taehyung's eyes filled with something raw. And I would have hated myself for letting you. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was violent. Years of silence slammed into that room like a thunderclap. Regret, longing, fear, all crashing into each other at once. You didn't just say no to the feature, Jungkook whispered. You said no to me. Taehyung stood now too. I said no to what it would do to us. Jungkook stepped closer. You said no without even asking me if I was still willing to fight. Because you always fight, Taehyung snapped. And I. His voice broke. I'm tired of fighting. Jungkook's face twisted in pain. Then what the hell are we doing here? Taehyung didn't answer right away. He walked toward the console, eyes falling on the lyric sheet. He picked it up, thumb running across the bottom corner where a coffee stain smudged the ink. I listened to the second version too, he said. The one where you replaced me with background harmonies. Jungkook's eyes flinched. I didn't want to. Taehyung nodded. And yet you did. Jungkook stepped forward. Do you want me to pull the track? Taehyung looked at him, long and hard. No. That stunned Jungkook. You don't? Taehyung shook his head. You earned every line in that song. And I can't erase myself from it just because I'm scared. The verse was about me. But the pain? That's yours. And I don't want to take that away. He handed the lyric sheet back. I'm not ready to sing it, but I'll never ask you to stop. For the first time in weeks, Jungkook's throat closed around something other than bitterness. It closed around gratitude, around grief. I kept your name in the credits, he said. I know, Taehyung replied. Then, after a pause, just don't let them pit us against each other again. Promise me that. Jungkook nodded slowly. I promise. And for a moment, just one moment, they stood in the middle of the studio, not as idols, not as symbols, but as two people who had survived each other's silence. Taehyung turned toward the door. But before he left, he said, without looking back, I have a song too. Jungkook blinked. It's not finished, Taehyung added. But if I ever decide to release it, you'll know who it's about. Then he left. Jungkook stood alone again. But for the first time since the verse was written, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like healing. What do you mean he has a song? Jimin's voice shot through the lounge like a crack of thunder. His phone was still in his hand. Screen paused on a blurry screenshot from a fan site that had caught Taehyung leaving the studio that night. Alone. Hood up. Eyes shadowed. But the look in Jungkook's face beside him told Jimin this wasn't gossip. Jungkook leaned back into the couch. Exhaustion etched deep into his eyes. He told me, right before he left. And Jungkook stared ahead. He said if he ever releases it, I'll know who it's about. Jimin dragged a hand through his hair and exhaled hard.
Why do you both talk like characters in a tragic drama? Just say what you mean to each other.
Jungkook gave a humorless laugh. Because when we did say what we meant, everything started falling apart. No, Jimin snapped. It started changing. You just didn't want to deal with what came next. Jungkook looked away, but Jimin pressed on. Is that why you haven't asked to hear the song? I'm scared, Jungkook muttered. What if it's about something I forgot? Or worse, something I never knew? Jimin sat beside him now, the tension heavy between them. Then maybe you deserve to hear it. 2 days passed before anything happened. Jungkook didn't reach out. Taehyung didn't call. The world moved on, or at least pretended to. Fans dissected every interaction, every outfit, every breath. A Twitter thread went viral, suggesting the second verse of Silent Truth was referencing a secret hotel incident in Tokyo, complete with alleged staff accounts and time-stamped elevator photos. Jungkook's name trended beside Taehyung's for 3 days straight. Then a file appeared in Jungkook's inbox. No message, just the title, Not Yours to Remember. Jungkook stared at the screen for a long time. The audio file was short, 3 minutes, unpolished. There was static at the beginning and end, just Taehyung's guitar, and his voice soft, raw, barely clinging to the key. He put on his headphones, closed his eyes, and pressed play. Taehyung's voice drifted in, quiet, like a memory he never meant to keep. You used to hum in hotel halls, divided by bruised knuckles on the bathroom walls, divided by I watched you break and never caught the fall, divided by because loving you meant hiding all. Jungkook sat up straight, heart pounding. He knew those lines. He remembered those nights. The Tokyo tour, the cracked mirror, the fight with management, the way he punched the wall after they made Taehyung apologize for something he didn't even do. The song continued. You told the world we were just light divided by, but dimmed yourself to make me bright divided by. I let them praise me while you lost your fight, divided by and never said I knew you might. His chest ached. Every word was a mirror. This wasn't a diss track. This wasn't blame. This was remorse. And then came the final verse, the one that shattered him. You wrote me in your verse so loud divided by, I whispered mine behind the crowd divided by. But if you ever miss me now divided by I was always there, just not allowed. The recording ended. Jungkook didn't move. His eyes were burning. The silence afterward was deafening. Not the kind that suffocated. The kind that demanded a response. That bled urgency through every second that ticked by. He called Taehyung. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Then he stood, grabbed his keys, and left the apartment. Taehyung was in a small practice room on the 5th floor of Hybe, the one no one used because the piano was out of tune and the light flickered when the air conditioning kicked on. But he liked it there. It was private, forgotten, just like the parts of himself he only brought out in music. The door opened suddenly. He turned and froze. Jungkook stood there, breathless. "You sent it," Jungkook said, voice tight. Taehyung looked away. "I wasn't going to." "Then why did you?" Taehyung picked up a guitar pick from the floor, twirled it in his fingers. "Because I owed you something honest. You think I needed closure?" "No," Taehyung replied, meeting his gaze. "I needed to give myself one." Jungkook stepped closer, jaw tense. "Why didn't you tell me back then? About any of it?" "Because I didn't want to make you carry my guilt," Taehyung said. "You were already drowning in your own." The room was too small for the storm between them. The air was thick. The piano creaked under the hum of the building. Jungkook took another step. "You think I would have judged you? You think I didn't already know?" Taehyung's voice rose. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because you left. Because you disappeared and pretended nothing happened. I disappeared because I loved you more than you loved yourself. And it was killing me to watch you destroy yourself for this image." Jungkook's breath caught. Taehyung was shaking now. "I knew what the company was doing to you. I saw it every day. The pressure, the lies, the loneliness. And I didn't know how to help without making it worse. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I wrote songs I never sang. I said no to features because I was scared of dragging you back into something you were barely surviving." The room pulsed with pain. "I never hated you, Jungkook," Taehyung whispered. "I hated what we became." Jungkook closed the distance. He reached out not to hug him, not to touch, just to be near enough that the silence between them couldn't grow again. And in the stillness that followed, Taehyung finally asked, voice trembling, "What now?" Jungkook breathed in, then said, softly, "Now we write something we're not afraid to sing." Taehyung's lips parted, stunned. "We're not the same people we were," Jungkook added. "But maybe that's a good thing." Taehyung nodded slowly. The flickering light overhead went out, but neither of them moved. In the dark, the silence between them had finally ended. Taehyung stared at the flickering studio light above him. It clicked every few seconds, on, off, just enough to be annoying, but not enough to justify leaving. He sat cross-legged on the floor, his back against the piano Jungkook had played days before. In his hand was a printed copy of the track list from Jungkook's solo album, the one where his name was both present and absent. Track 8, Silent Truth, Feet. The feet had been left blank on purpose. In the metadata, on the official listing, even on streaming platforms. It had confused fans, sparked theories, driven clicks. But now, sitting here, Taehyung knew exactly what Jungkook had done. He hadn't removed him from the song. He'd erased himself from it just so the world wouldn't blame either of them. That was worse. The door burst open without warning, and Namjoon stepped in, jaw clenched, phone in his hand. "You two need to fix this. Now." Taehyung didn't flinch. "I thought we were past the fixing stage." Namjoon tossed the phone onto the piano bench. The screen showed an article, "The Korea Dispatch Exclusive. Private emails reveal internal rift between BTS members over album credits. They're leaking contracts now," Namjoon said. "And don't act like you don't know who's feeding them." Taehyung blinked. "Hybe? No," Namjoon snapped. "Someone closer. Someone inside your circle." Taehyung stood slowly. "You think I would sabotage him?" "I think silence becomes complicity real fast in this industry." "That's rich coming from you," Taehyung shot back. "You told me to step back when I first asked about the song." "I told you to think," Namjoon corrected. "And you chose silence." Again, Taehyung clenched his fists. "So what now? I'm the villain because I didn't want to perform something that ripped me open?" "You're not the villain," Namjoon said more quietly now. "But you're letting other people write your story. You and Jungkook started this with honesty. Don't end it with passive-aggressive press cycles." Taehyung said nothing. Namjoon approached him slowly. Do you love him? Taehyung flinched, as if slapped. That's none of your… Answer me, Namjoon interrupted. Forget the fans. Forget the press. Forget the fucking album. Do you love him? Taehyung's voice was barely a breath. Yes. Then tell him. I can't, Taehyung snapped. Because if I do, and he doesn't feel the same, I lose him for good. Namjoon stepped back, shaking his head. You already are losing him. Meanwhile, Jungkook stood outside his apartment building, staring at the swarm of reporters stationed across the street. They were waiting like vultures, cameras ready, headlines already drafted. Jungkook's mystery feud with BTS member deepens. Silent Truth, the track that broke Taekook. He hated the word taekook. It wasn't theirs anymore. It belonged to timelines and theories, to fantasy, not reality. He turned and headed to the underground garage, slipping into his car and driving without direction, without destination, until he reached the Han River, the same place where they used to come at night and scream into the wind. He parked. Taehyung was already there. He stood by the railing, hoodie up, hair messy, eyes locked on the water like it might offer him something no human could. Jungkook stepped beside him. They said nothing for a long time. Then, softly, Taehyung whispered, They're calling me your ghostwriter now. Jungkook gave a dry laugh. That's generous. They think I wrote the entire verse to bait you into controversy. I know, Taehyung said. They think you refused the feature because you're bitter about my solo success. I know, Taehyung repeated. They think we hate each other. Taehyung turned to him finally. Do you? Jungkook's expression shattered. I could never hate you. Silence. Then Taehyung said, Then why did you erase yourself from the credits? Because I knew they'd look for someone to blame, and it was easier if it looked like it was just incomplete. Taehyung looked away. You shouldn't have protected me. Jungkook shook his head. I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting us. The wind howled across the bridge. I listened to your song again, Jungkook said. 10 times. Taehyung nodded. I almost didn't send it. You said something in it. About never being allowed. Taehyung closed his eyes. I was never allowed to love you publicly. That doesn't mean I didn't love you. Jungkook turned to him. And now? I still do, Taehyung whispered. But I don't know if we can survive it. Jungkook reached for his hand, and this time, Taehyung didn't pull away. Let's stop surviving it, Jungkook said. Let's live it. Even if it breaks everything else. They stood in the dark, fingers interlocked, hearts exposed under the city lights. Not idols, not headlines, not victims of speculation. Just 2 men, finally honest, finally choosing each other. The next morning was brutal. Jungkook's name trended before sunrise. But this time, it wasn't about album sales or solo schedules. It was a grainy video, a shaky fan-captured clip taken near the Han River. 2 silhouettes, hand in hand. One unmistakably Jungkook. The other tall, familiar, face obscured. But no one needed confirmation. It had finally happened, and the internet devoured it. Armies exploded. Some cried, some cheered, others denied it entirely. But a larger storm brewed just beneath the surface management, sponsorships, and corporate contracts written in ink, thick with implications. Hybe's emergency meeting was scheduled within the hour. Jungkook woke up to 27 missed calls and a single message from Taehyung. They'll make me disappear for this. He sat upright in bed, heart pounding. Just then, his manager barged in, uninvited, jaw clenched, and voice like steel. They want you at the main office. Now, Jungkook didn't respond immediately. He stared at the phone in his hand, thumbs hovering over Taehyung's message. He didn't even know what to say. No words seemed enough to protect him. Do you even understand what you've done? The manager shouted now. There are contracts tied to your public image exclusive deals? Do you think Samsung or Louis Vuitton want a scandal involving 2 of their faces in a public romance rumor? Jungkook's eyes snapped up, calm but piercing. It's not a rumor. The manager stopped short. Color drained from his face. You didn't just say that. I did, Jungkook said, standing now. Because I'm done lying. The room dropped into stunned silence. Tell Hybe I'll meet them, Jungkook added. But I'm not showing up alone. Meanwhile, Taehyung was already standing in the lobby of the Hybe building, hoodie pulled up, sunglasses on. He didn't say a word as the elevator climbed to the executive floor. The messages had come in non-stop since 5 a.m., some polite, most threatening. "We trusted you. We invested in your image. This isn't about love. It's about business." He was used to that. But what he wasn't used to was the quiet fear in his own chest. The fear that Jungkook might fold under pressure. That all of this, the confessions, the rooftop, the verse, would be rewritten in PR scripts. He stepped into the boardroom and froze. Jungkook was already there, facing a semicircle of executives in black suits. His arms were folded, his posture defiant. And when he saw Taehyung, something unspoken passed between them more powerful than any lyric they'd ever shared. "Ah," the CEO said, expression tight. "You brought the other half of the problem." "No," Jungkook said coldly. "I brought the other half of the truth." The tension exploded. "What do you think this is?" a legal advisor hissed. "A romantic drama for your fans to live through vicariously? You're public figures. You don't get to have secrets like this." "Then why does everyone else get to love out loud except us?" Taehyung snapped, voice rising. "Why is our silence expected just to protect profits?" "Because you signed that silence into your contracts," another snapped back. Clause 14, Section 3 relationships that could negatively affect group image or brand equity. "You want to talk about damage?" Jungkook interrupted, slamming his palm on the table. "You should have seen what silence did to us, to our mental health, our friendship, our music." The room trembled. Jungkook wasn't the maknae anymore. He wasn't a kid begging for approval. He was a man who had carried a global brand on his shoulders and was finally asking for something back. "I'm not asking you to release a joint statement," Jungkook said. "I'm asking you to let us breathe. I don't care if you want to spin it as a collaborative reunion or whatever, but I won't let you pretend like we're strangers again. Not this time." The CEO leaned forward. "You're putting your career at risk." Taehyung stepped beside Jungkook. "Then so be it." The meeting ended in chaos, but they walked out together. The video of the two of them leaving, hype spread even faster than the first one. No security barriers, no running, just two men walking side by side, heads high, hearts visible. That night, Jungkook uploaded a video to his personal YouTube channel. No edits, no music, just him, raw, honest. "I wrote a verse I thought would be sung with him," he said. "It wasn't, but I understand now it was never about the song. It was about fear, about how this industry makes you terrified to be human." He paused, eyes glassy. "I'm not afraid anymore. I love him, and I don't need a label's permission to say it." The internet exploded. Taehyung reposted it with a caption that broke the world. "I never needed the verse, I had the whole song." And for the first time, in a sea of curated images and engineered silence, the truth was finally louder than the fame. But this was just the beginning, because behind every truth comes a price. Taehyung's phone was vibrating non-stop on the wooden table of his apartment. Notifications flared from every corner of the internet news outlets. Trending tags, company warnings, masked as urgent discussions, and even a few old friends who had never dared to text him about this topic until now. He didn't touch it. The only message he'd opened was from his mother. "I saw your name on the news. You look tired. Are you okay?" That one made him cry. He hadn't cried in years. He stood barefoot on the balcony now, sweater sleeves pulled over his hands. Seoul was still alive below him, traffic flowing like arteries, neon signs blinking through the mist. The city didn't care what hearts it broke. Behind him, his doorbell rang. He didn't move. The knock came again. "Taehyung, open up." Jungkook's voice. Low, steady, like the chorus of a song he couldn't forget. Taehyung didn't ask how he got past security. Jungkook always found a way in. He opened the door. Jungkook stepped inside without waiting. He looked wired, eyes red, jaw clenched, and his hands still twitching from adrenaline. "They tried to cancel your fan meeting," Jungkook said immediately. "I made some calls. It's back on." Taehyung shut the door quietly. "I didn't even know it was in danger. They said it's too sensitive right now. Too much attention. Too many implications. And you fixed it?" Jungkook turned, voice sharper now. "I threatened them." Taehyung's brows furrowed. "You shouldn't have." "I had to. I watched them erase us in slow motion once already, Taehyung. I won't do it again." There was a pause. Then Taehyung whispered, "And what if we're not strong enough for this?" Jungkook blinked. Are you scared? Taehyung looked him in the eye. Terrified. Jungkook stepped forward. So am I. But I'd rather be terrified standing next to you than numb pretending I'm not. Taehyung turned away, walking toward the living room. He rubbed his temples. I keep thinking about what it would have been like, he said, if we met as nobodies. If we weren't Jungkook and V. If we could have just loved each other without a lens. Jungkook's voice softened behind him. But we did meet as nobodies, remember? We were just two boys, auditioning in borrowed clothes, trying to sing loud enough so someone would hear us. And now everyone's listening, Taehyung whispered. Then let them. Taehyung turned slowly. You don't care what this does to your career? I care what it does to me if I keep pretending this isn't real. Taehyung laughed bitterly. They think it's a PR stunt now. That this is just an album concept. Jungkook's expression darkened. Let them think that. The truth doesn't need their permission. But it might cost us everything, Taehyung snapped. Then we'll build something new. Taehyung stared at him. You make it sound so easy. It's not, Jungkook said. It's impossible, but I'd rather fail with you than succeed alone. Taehyung looked away again. What if we're just a phase to them? He said. A hashtag? What if they get bored of us and move on, and we're left with the wreckage of something they don't care about anymore? Jungkook walked to him and placed his hands on his shoulders. Firm, grounding. Then we stop living for them. Taehyung shook his head slowly. You're braver than me. No, Jungkook said. I'm just finally tired of being afraid. A long silence followed. Then Taehyung asked, if we weren't idols, what would we be right now? Jungkook smiled faintly. Probably arguing about whose turn it is to do laundry. Taehyung let out a small laugh, the first one in days. They stood there, not kissing, not confessing again, just breathing the same air, existing, holding onto a space the world had tried so hard to collapse. And then Taehyung said something he'd never said before. Come with me to Paris. Jungkook blinked. What? There's an art exhibit next week. I was invited before all this. I declined, but I think I want to go now. Because of me? Because I want to go as myself. And I want you beside me. Jungkook's voice was barely audible. And what if cameras catch us again? Taehyung met his gaze. Let them. Outside. The city roared. But inside that apartment, two people were finally louder. The flashbulbs were blinding. It wasn't even the red carpet, just the narrow sidewalk outside a quiet art gallery in the Marais district. But the chaos might as well have been a film premiere. Cameras lined up like soldiers, clicking in staccato rhythms as if trying to pin every frame of Jungkook and Taehyung into something legible, something palatable, something sellable. They stepped out of the black car slowly. Taehyung wore a charcoal suit, no tie, collar open just enough to whisper defiance. Jungkook was all black satin and steel, his silver earrings gleaming under the Paris street lamps like warning signs. They didn't hold hands, but they didn't walk apart either. As they entered the gallery, the crowd outside kept screaming. Not hate, not quite love, just noise. Interrogation disguised as applause. Inside, it was eerily calm. Classical music drifted through the halls. Art hung on stark white walls, and soft French murmurs circled the crowd like perfume. No one inside seemed to notice the boys from Korea. Or maybe they did, but chose not to stare. Jungkook exhaled sharply as soon as the doors closed behind them. That was insane, he muttered, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Taehyung glanced at him. You still sure about being here? I'm only sure about being with you. Taehyung looked away for a moment, his throat tightening. He wasn't used to Jungkook being this direct, this brave. It both thrilled and terrified him. They moved through the gallery slowly, their footsteps echoing. Abstract pieces blurred past them, brushstrokes and sculptures, too vague to explain. Taehyung paused in front of one, a large, messy canvas with streaks of crimson slashed through gray. It looks like something breaking, he murmured. Jungkook stood beside him, arms folded. Maybe it's something escaping. Taehyung smiled faintly. Maybe they're the same thing. They didn't talk about the leak that had surfaced earlier that morning, the one showing private voice memos from Jungkook's unreleased tracks. Someone from inside the company had sold them. The media was spinning it already, saying Jungkook was obsessed, saying he was writing songs about Taehyung that never made the cut, calling it a pattern, an emotional spiral. And then there was the new rumor. The worst one yet. A whispered deal between HYBE executives to reassign Taehyung to a different project, something away from the group, away from Jungkook, something long-term, possibly overseas. Under the pretense of rebranding, Taehyung had seen the emails. He hadn't told Jungkook. Not yet. "Come here," Jungkook said suddenly, pulling him into a quiet alcove beside a sculpture of broken wings cast in marble. The gallery lighting here was dimmer, softer. Taehyung followed, confused. "I need to ask you something," Jungkook said, voice low. "And I want the truth." Taehyung stiffened. "Okay." Jungkook leaned in, not touching him. But so close, his breath warmed Taehyung's skin. "Did you know they were planning to separate us?" Taehyung's eyes flicked upward in shock. Jungkook's expression hardened. "So it's true." Taehyung's voice was barely a whisper. "I was going to tell you after this trip. I didn't want to ruin—" "You didn't want to ruin Paris?" Jungkook snapped. "Taehyung, they're trying to erase everything we just started to rebuild." Taehyung grabbed his wrist, desperate now. "I didn't think you could do anything about it." "I don't care what they think they can do," Jungkook hissed. "I'm not a rookie anymore. I have leverage. I have power. You should have trusted me." "I was trying to protect you," Taehyung said, breath catching. "They warned me that if I told you, they'd frame it like you were behind it, that you pushed me away, that it was your decision." Jungkook froze. His voice dropped into a dangerous calm. "And you believed they'd turn me into the villain?" "No," Taehyung said quickly. "I believed they'd make you believe it. I believed they'd twist everything until we couldn't recognize what was real anymore." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Jungkook stepped back. "You think I'm that weak?" Taehyung's mouth opened. "That's not. You think after everything, I'd fall for that again? After Tokyo? After the album? After I stood in a boardroom and told them I loved you in front of every person who could ruin my life?" Taehyung's hands trembled. "I was scared," he said. "I didn't know how to fight it." Jungkook turned away. His shoulders rose and fell rapidly, his breath uneven. "You should have let me fight for you. I didn't want to be something you had to save, Jungkook. I wanted to be someone who stood with you, and I failed at that." Jungkook turned around slowly, his voice cracked. "No, you didn't fail. You just forgot that you don't have to do this alone anymore." Taehyung stepped closer, eyes wet now. "Then don't leave me behind when this gets worse." "I won't," Jungkook said. "But next time, tell me. Even if it hurts." Taehyung nodded. "I will." They stood in the quiet corner of that Parisian gallery, framed by sculpture and silence, two fractured lives trying to hold each other without shaking. Somewhere behind them, people were beginning to notice. Phones raised, murmurs grew. A camera clicked, but neither of them moved. They didn't run. They didn't hide. Jungkook reached down and laced their fingers together, firm, defiant. And for the first time since their verse was written and refused, since silence turned into strategy, since love became something politicized, this moment felt honest. Paris was never meant to be quiet, but maybe now it didn't have to be. The morning after the Paris gallery storm, Taehyung's face was on every screen. News anchors debated the handshake that turned into fingers intertwined. Commentators dissected the single moment when Jungkook reached for him under the sculpted wings and didn't let go. Fashion magazines tried to spin the moment as style with symbolism, while tabloids shrieked betrayal, rebellion, and even sabotage. But the worst part wasn't the coverage. It was the silence from HYBE. No statements, no denial, no support, just absence. Jungkook paced the hotel room, his jaw locked tight, phone pressed to his ear as the line rang out again. This was the 6th call in 3 hours. "They're not answering," he muttered, slamming the phone onto the table. "They're stalling." Taehyung sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, staring at nothing. He hadn't spoken much since they returned. He was too aware of the avalanche creeping toward them. Jungkook dropped into the chair across from him, eyes fierce. "Say something." Taehyung blinked, then quietly said, "They think they can wait us out." "No, they think they can shame us out. They're banking on us breaking." Taehyung swallowed hard. "And what if I do?" Jungkook leaned forward. "Then break beside me, not in silence." Taehyung's breath hitched. Jungkook reached out, took his hand. "They've been writing our story for too long. Maybe it's time we finish it our way." That afternoon, the world received a shock they never expected. A live stream. No company logos. No marketing campaign. Just a notification. At Jungkook. Live. It opened, with both of them in frame. No makeup. No filters. Just them, sitting shoulder to shoulder on a couch in their Paris hotel room. Taehyung spoke first. Hi. His voice was soft, unsure. I'm not used to this kind of talking. Not in front of so many people. Not without choreography or lines. Jungkook took over. We don't have a script. We just have the truth. They looked at each other. A silent nod exchanged. Then back at the camera. Taehyung's voice grew steadier. We've seen what's being said. We've read the headlines. And we've stayed quiet for a long time because we thought it was safer. Jungkook added, but silence isn't safety. It's surrender. And we're tired of surrendering. Taehyung inhaled deeply, then finally said it. I love him. The chat exploded. He held up a hand gently. Please let me finish. He looked directly into the camera now. I love him. Not as a concept, not as a ship, not as a mystery or myth or hidden song lyric. I love Jungkook as the person who stayed when I pushed, who waited when I ran, who believed when I doubted myself. Jungkook was visibly holding back tears now. And I'm saying this because I'm tired of pretending that love should come with apology. Jungkook spoke next, voice steady despite the quiver in his chest. This isn't just a confession. It's a line in the sand. If loving each other costs us endorsements, screen time, or even fans, then so be it. But it won't cost us each other. A moment of silence passed, sacred. Then Taehyung added, we're still artists. We're still BTS. That doesn't change, but neither does this. The stream cut after a few seconds of quiet. No goodbye. No slogan. Just the image of two men choosing truth. The reaction was seismic. Some fans wept. Some screamed betrayal. Others posted decade-old clips, pointing to the smiles, the touches, the glances that now carried new weight. But the storm wasn't over. An anonymous statement from within HYBE hit the internet that evening. Leaked, purposeful, and filled with venom. Personal decisions made without organizational consultation reflect a lack of professionalism and endanger brand integrity. It was thinly veiled, but the message was clear. Jungkook paced again. They're building a case. Taehyung's phone rang next. His manager, he answered, listened for 10 seconds, then went pale. They want me to take a leave, he said. Effective immediately, without pay. Jungkook stopped moving. They're sidelining you, Taehyung nodded. Until the public calms down. Until I regain perspective. Jungkook's hands curled into fists. They won't stop until they erase us. Taehyung's voice was hollow. Maybe they already started. That night, Jungkook posted again. Not a live stream. A document. A contract termination notice. Signed by him. The caption? Freedom begins when fear ends. And just like that, the first fracture in BTS became official. The world stopped breathing. But Jungkook didn't. He walked into the storm, eyes open, hand extended toward Taehyung, and whispered, let them write headlines. We'll write the ending.